Good morning, students, and welcome to chapter number 4 from the Diary of Anne Frank, written by Anne Frank herself. This lesson is an excerpt from the Diary of a Young Girl, or the Diary of Anne Frank. It is an autobiography that was first published in 1947. In this, Anne expresses her thoughts in a diary which was gifted to her on her 13th birthday. She names the diary Kitty, which she considers as her only true friend. She mentions about her childhood, her family, and a lot of other things that she has told no one else. Now this lesson I'll be doing in two parts, and today I'll be completing up to page number 51. So let us read. Before you read, Anneliese Marie Anne Frank was born on 12th of June 1929. She was a German-born Jewish girl who wrote while in hiding with her family and 4 friends in Amsterdam during the German occupation of the Netherlands in World War II. Her family had moved to Amsterdam after the Nazis gained power in Germany, but were trapped when the Nazi occupation extended into the Netherlands. As persecutions against the Jewish population increased, the family went into hiding in July 1942 in hidden rooms in her father Otto Frank's office building. After 2 years in hiding, the group was betrayed and transported to the concentration camp system, where Anne died of typhus in Bergen-Belsen within days of her sister Margot Frank. Her father, Otto, was the only survivor of the group. He returned to Amsterdam after the war ended to find that her diary had been saved. Convinced that it was a unique record, he took action to have it published in English under the name The Diary of a Young Girl. The diary was given to Anne Frank for her 13th birthday and chronicles the events of her life from 12th June 1942 until its final entry of 1st August 1944. It was eventually translated from its original Dutch into many languages and became one of the world's most widely read books. There have also been several films, television and theatrical productions, and even an opera based on the diary. Described as the work of a mature and insightful mind, the diary provides an intimate examination of daily life under the Nazi occupation. Anne Frank has become one of the most renowned and discussed of the Holocaust victims. Okay, children, so here they are telling us about Anne Frank's life, that she was a German-born Jewish girl who wrote while she was in hiding. Now, if you have studied history, you would know that Hitler hated the Jews because the Jews were in the topmost positions in Germany, and he wanted to see he wanted to kill the last Jewish person in his country, and that was the reason why most of the Jews were in hiding. And not only that, when he managed to catch the Jews, he sent them to concentration camps, gas chambers, where he shaved all of them. He made them work very hard in very cold, sub-zero conditions, and he skinned them. He made lampshades, and different things were made of their skins. Thousands and thousands of people, of Jewish people, died in these concentration camps. So here, since Anne Frank's family, they were Jewish, they were also in hiding. Her family had moved to Amsterdam after the Nazis gained power in Germany, but they were trapped when the Nazi occupation extended into the Netherlands. And persecution means when the German soldiers and German police were all searching for all these Jewish people. So as the persecution against the Jewish population increased, Anne Frank's family went into hiding. That means they went into secret rooms that were provided by her father in their office building. They had left their house and he had made provision for them to live there. So they lived there for almost 2 years in hiding with the help of certain Jewish German people who came and helped them, gave them provisions, and helped them in many different ways. So they lived there for 2 years, and then finally somebody betrayed them. So they transported them to the concentration camp, and there Anne died of typhus. That is a disease uh, like pneumonia in Bergen Belsen, and she died after her elder sister passed away. Her father was the only survivor of that group, and he returned back to Amsterdam after the war was over, and he found that her diary had been saved. He was convinced that this was a unique record of all her life during the Nazi persecution period, and so he decided to have that diary published under the name of A Diary of a Young Girl. This diary had been given to Anne Frank on her 13th birthday, and she wrote all the events that happened in her life from 12th June 1942 until 1st August 1944, a little over a period of more than 2 years. And then it was finally translated from the original Dutch language into many other languages and became a very famous book the world over. There were several films, television films, and theatrical productions, means dramas that were made, and even an opera, where they had singing depicting her life based on the diary. And when anyone goes through it, then people have described this as the work of a very mature and insightful mind, even though she was just a teenager. But when you read the things that she has written, you will know that she was a very mature girl. And it provides a very intimate examination, a very close examination of what life was like under the Nazi occupation of Netherlands. She became one of the most famous and discussed of the Holocaust victim. So let us read on further. So this exercise is about a diary writing, and there are some terms. We will come back to this activity in the second part of the lesson. So let us continue reading on further. Writing in a diary is a really strange experience for someone like me, not only because I've never written anything before, but also because it seems to me that later on neither I nor anyone else will be interested in the musings of a 13-year-old schoolgirl. Oh well, it doesn't matter. I feel like writing, and I have an even greater need to get all kinds of things off my chest. Paper has more patience than people. I thought of this saying on one of those days when I was feeling a little depressed and was sitting at home with my chin in my hands, bored and listless, wondering whether to stay in or go out. I finally stayed where I was, brooding. Yes, paper does have more patience, and since I'm not planning to let anyone else read this stiff-backed notebook grandly referred to as a diary, unless I should ever find a real friend, it probably won't make a bit of difference. Now I'm back to the point that prompted me to keep a diary in the first place. I don't have a friend. Okay, children, now let's just look at this portion of the lesson that I've read. The meaning of the word listless is to be without any energy or interest. Now here, Anne Frank is talking about her own experience. She says that writing in a diary was a strange experience for someone like her because she had never written anything before. And not only that, she says that not only did she not write anything before, but it seems that who would be interested in the, thinking of a teenager, a 13-year-old schoolgirl. But she says that didn't matter. She felt like writing, and she said that she didn't have any close friend, and that was the reason why she wanted to get things off her chest. It was not really, she just, the meaning of getting things off your chest is feeling, putting down things on paper, getting them out of her mind, and getting rid of all whatever she had in her mind. And then she says that paper has more patience than people. Now, what is the meaning of that? It means that if you want to tell all your personal thoughts and feelings and what are your hopes for the future, very few people will want to listen to you. Very few people will have the time or the interest in whatever you have to say. And that's the reason why she says that paper has more patience than people. People will listen for a few minutes and then they will lose interest in what you say. So paper is very different. Whatever you feel like writing, a paper will readily accept that. And that's why she says, I thought of this saying on one of those days. Like one day she was feeling very depressed and just sitting at home with her chin in her hand, very bored and not wanting to do anything, not having any interest or energy, wondering whether to stay in or go out. She finally stayed. And then she kept on thinking about something. She says, yes, that paper does have more patience. And she said, since she wasn't planning on letting anyone else read that step back, that book that she got, where they referred to as a diary, she says, unless I find a real friend, then I will not need to write all that I'm writing in this book, in the diary. But she says, I don't know if that will make much of a difference. But she says, now I'm back to the point. What got her started on wanting to write the diary? The fact that she had such a lot of thoughts and feelings that she had inside of her, that she wanted to share it with someone. And she thought, what better than to start a diary and to write whatever came to her mind, whatever was in her heart and whatever was on her mind, she wanted to pen it down. So she said that since she didn't have a friend, the diary was the next alternative. Let's continue to read on further. Let me put it more clearly, since no one will believe that a 13-year-old girl is completely alone in the world. And I'm not. I have loving parents, a 16-year-old sister, and there are about 30 people I can call friends. I have a family, loving aunts, and a good home. No, on the surface, I seem to have everything except my one true friend. All I think about when I'm with friends is having a good time. I can't bring myself to talk about anything but ordinary everyday things. We don't seem to be able to get any closer, and that's the problem. Maybe it's my fault that we don't confide in each other. In any case, that's just how things are, and unfortunately, they are not liable to change. This is why I've started the diary. To enhance the image of this long-awaited friend in my imagination, I don't want to jot down the facts in this diary the way most people do, but I want that diary to be my friend. And I'm going to call this friend Kitty. So children, here we see that since she was in a very depressed mood and brooding on things, and Anne Frank wanted to begin getting things off her chest, so she decided that I am going to write everything that I would have shared with my friend. I will write it down in a diary. But then she reasons very logically. She says, if you look at it, nobody will believe that a 13-year-old girl having a nice loving family, having an elder sister who's 16-year-old and having very loving aunts, a nice home. She says on the surface everything seems to be okay, but there is a vacuum in her life. She says that it's not that she doesn't have friends, she has friends, but no one with whom she can share her innermost feelings. When she's with her friends, they're all enjoying themselves and talking and laughing and having a nice time. So she says that she just does what everyone else is doing, but with no one can she share her innermost thoughts and feelings. So she says that maybe it's my fault that I just cannot confide in any other person. But she says that's just the way things are. And she says maybe they're not going to change. And so this is the reason why she started writing that diary. And she says to make it better. What is to enhance is to make that image of a long awaited friend. She had an imagination in her mind. In her imagination, she always waited that somebody will come along who will be so close to me that I can tell that person everything that I want to tell them. I don't want to jot down the facts in this diary. Like, she didn't just want to put down dates and times and places like the way most people do. But she said that I wanted that diary to be my friend and I'm going to call this friend. So she named her diary Kitty. The meaning of the word confide is to tell personal things privately to another person, and that person needs to be trustworthy. So let us read on ahead. Since no one would understand the word of my stories to Kitty if I were to plunge right in, I'd better provide a brief sketch of my life, much as I dislike doing so. My father, the most adorable father I've ever seen, didn't marry my mother until he was 36 and she was 25. My sister Margot was born in Frankfurt in Germany in 1926 and I was born on the 12th of June 1929. I lived in Frankfurt until I was 4. My father emigrated to Holland in 1933. My mother, Edith Hollander Frank, went with him to Holland in September, while Margot and I were sent to Aachen to stay with our grandmother. Margot went to Holland in December and I followed in February, where I was plunked down on the table as a birthday present for Margot. I started right away at the Montessori nursery school. I stayed there until I was 6, at which time I started in the first form. In the sixth form, my teacher was Mrs. Cuperis, the headmistress. At the end of the year, we were both in tears as we said a heartbreaking farewell. And so, as she begins writing her diary, Anne Frank says that no one will understand whatever I have written to Kitty if I were to just begin. And so she says it's better that she provides a brief sketch of her life, even though she disliked doing so. Now, the meaning of the word plunk down is to put down in a very casual way. So, in the beginning of her diary writing, she gives her background and she says that her father was the most adorable father. That means the most loving father, that she says she had never seen anyone's father to be like her own. And she said that he had not married her mother until he was 36-year old and her mother was just 25. And her sister was born in Frankfurt in Germany in the year 1926. But she was born 3 years later and she lived in Frankfurt until she was 4 years old. Then her father left Frankfurt and went to Holland in Netherlands, okay, in 1933. So her mother, Edith, went with him. Since her father was going to Holland, her mother accompanied him. And so her sister and she, Margot and she, were sent to live with their grandmother. Margot went to Holland in December and within 2 months they sent Anne also to the grandmother's place, and she was taken and she was just put down on the table like she was a birthday gift for her elder sister. So she stayed there for till she was 6 years old. She started there in the Montessori nursery school and she stayed there until she was 6. At that time, when she first went there, she went there in the first standard and she lived for 6 years till she was in the 6th standard. Her teacher was Mrs. Cuperis, who was the headmistress. And at the end of the year, they were both in tears as they said a heartbreaking farewell. That means the teachers got so fond of them that they were feeling very sad to see them go away. Then in the summer of 1941, their grandma fell very ill and had to have an operation. So her birthday passed with very little celebration. Grandma died the next year in January 1942, 6 months later. No one knows how often I think of her and still love her. This birthday celebration in 1942 was intended to make up for the other, and Grandma's candle was lit along with the rest. The four of us are still doing well, and that brings me to the present date of 20th June 1942 and the solemn dedication of my diary. So here Anne tells us that she lived there for 6 years with her grandmother, but because her grandmother fell ill and had to have an operation, and that's the reason why they couldn't have a very nice birthday celebration. So the next year, her grandmother passed away in at the beginning of that new year, January 1942. But no one knew that she was so, she loved her grandmother so much, and that she thought of her very, very often. So that year, after the grandmother passed away, her parents had a wonderful birthday celebration to make up for the previous year when they could not have a celebration and her grandma was ill. So when her birthday was celebrated, then grandma's candle was also lit along with the rest of the candles for Anne Frank. And then she says that after that day, all the four, that means her parents and Margot and Anne, all lived together. They stayed together and they were doing very well. So that brought her to that present date of 20th June 1942. It was a very solemn date for her, as that was the day that she began writing her diary. So children, I will stop here, and then we will continue with the rest of the story about Anne Frank in the next part of the lesson. I hope you have understood. This much is clear. So thank you and have a nice day.